Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, how dare you, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon, and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon, crypto, and thanks button in the info box below the video. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show on Facebook and Twitter. Now we are joined by Refracted Curvature, Matthew, Chocolate, 10th, Righteous, Arwin, Neil, and a whole bunch of people in Discord, so welcome one and all.
How are you going today?
Good morning, everyone.
Hey.
Well, hello.
Good morning.
It's good to have you all. Any evidence that you can have gas pressure without the necessary antecedent of a container to press upon?
Me lungs say no.
Well, the to-go video on YouTube that everyone uses is a guy who brings in pressurized gas in containers and then uses a 40-foot pipe, which is a container with one end open, and says, see, I've got gas pressure without a container.
That same guy needed a citation to tell him that that container, the pipe, was a container. So he might have to start there.
Well, this is my point. It's like you're watching this video of their best defense. This is their best defense against that question. And you're saying, unbelievable.
Any
The
evidence of a self-perpetuating molten iron core at the center of a presupposed spherical Earth?
You got to prove it's a spherical Earth first.
You're going to need R for that.
Okay. Any evidence of the R value, that's Earth radius value?
You're going to need to prove there's a molten iron core first.
You're gonna need some elevation angles off flat Earth.
Right, on screen
Imagine
now.
some angles from hell.
There you go.
I don't know about angles from hell, but in terms of the acquisition of angles to stars in this instance, on screen right-hand diagram is triangulation by way of an elevation angle measurement to 3 stars, S1, S2, and S3. Now, in order to have right angles below the ground position, which is the position directly below each star, which is logged in the almanac, you need a flat Earth to achieve that 90 degree. I'm just going to point my mouse at what I'm talking about here. This is the ground position. It's below the star, and when you measure the angle from here to get the position in the almanac for the particular time, which is why you take a chronometer, aka watch, out to sea with you, so that you can log the angle at a particular time. So then you can look up where that star is above, directly above, where its ground position is at that particular moment in time. And once you have that angle off a flat Earth and 90 degree at the ground position of a star, you can draw a circle. Now, this circle is called a circle of equal elevation, or area of equal altitude. Now, that requires Earth to be flat in order to achieve it. I bring this up because we're going to be covering, for the second time, Red Rhetoric. So Red Rhetoric has made a video including, I don't know if he's a videographer, but another person he's named as Astronomy Live. I don't quite know who that dude is, but nevertheless, both of them are proving flat Earth over and over again by way of elevation angle measurements. So they're then going to move forward in this particular video to describe how they're going to acquire distance to the sun by using flat Earth elevation angle measurements. Is there any comment, as we've already got into this? Probably not. If we just want to move on, then I'll do that now. let me know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
real quick, real quick.
Yep, go
You're
ahead.
gonna need three. You're gonna need three circles of equal altitude, not just one,
Yeah,
to get your fix.
we'll come
But
back to this.
using the same plane, the same horizontal baseline for the three readings.
Yeah, I'll just elaborate on what Jorge's just said. You can go in a minute, 10th, if you can just hold that thought. What Jorge's saying is, on these circles, let's say for the sake of argument that this position is 500 miles away from you. Well, if that's true for this and this, yeah, then you've got between these two positions 1,000 miles on a flat Earth. Now they're extending out based on a circle, area of equal altitude, circle of equal elevation, however you want to term it, in all directions from your location, flat in every direction. So you're talking about tens of thousands of square miles in all directions that's being measured and navigated with the prerequisite that Earth must be flat to do this. Correct, Jorge. Good point. It's not just one circle. All of this, which is potentially thousands of miles of flat Earth. Go ahead, 10th.
Yeah, exactly what Jorge is saying. However, I want to add that if you look at the picture, you see three circles and you see the angles are all the same on S1, S2, and S3. But in reality, the navigator with the sextant will have maybe 50 degree to a star that might have a 30 degree to another star and might have, say, 45 degree to another star. So you can imagine in your mind these angles being different, but the baseline all being flat and a 90 where the star's GP is. And when the three circles meet where they cross, that's where the navigator is. So imagine one circle, 2,200 miles from the center. And the other one maybe 1,000, maybe, and the other one maybe say 800, whatever. So all that, it has to be flat.
That 10th, that sounds a bit, I don't know. Correct me if I'm off, but if the biggest, what am I trying to say here? If the measurement to the horizon supposedly is 1.22 times the square root of the observer's height in feet, and you're saying that we can measure something 5,000 miles away, 2,000 miles away, that doesn't that seem a little off?
Yeah, it's not-
Yeah, good point.
not conclusive at all.
5,400 miles
It
being
gets
the
worse
most.
than that. It's worse than that. You get three circles, right, 10th?
Well, the idea is three for sure puts you. Sometimes two works because you know where you are by dead reckoning and what part of, if you're in the Atlantic Ocean or if you're in some other ocean, you're able to understand where you are. But three is for sure the best way. But to Chocolate's point, it's 90 degrees is the most you can have. 90 times 60 is 5,400 nautical miles of flat baseline. Can never be anything else. So the largest distance using the 90 rule is 5,400 nautical miles. So if you're sighting something just at the horizon, that's 5,400 nautical miles, okay? And if you're sighting something, at 50 degrees, 50 minus 90 leaves you 40. 40 times 60 nautical miles, 2,400 nautical miles. So you got one star 5,400 miles away from you, requiring a flat baseline from you all the way to the star's GP, and the other one 2,400 miles.
Yeah, but it gets worse though, because if you can actually observe Polaris 1 degree south of the equator, that is one circle, and that single circle is greater than the geometry of the Earth allows to. Now, if you do a second reading to any other star by using the same horizontal plane, I mean, the plane itself is greater than the geometry allows for the sphere. It has to.
That's kind of my point. Like if you're on a boat and you're using a sextant to measure these nautical miles, I don't I don't know how tall these boats are supposed to be, but that observer height wouldn't give you that type of distance to this supposed measurement to the horizon. But now you're saying you can measure 2,000, maybe even 5,000 nautical miles?
Well, the horizon, in this sense, chocolate, is used to create the vertical of the star. See, to get in the ocean as a navigator on a boat that's rocking, is very difficult to get your zenith, your 90. This is why in this diagram it shows the 90 zenith of the stars rather than the observer. So you use the horizon as a flat horizontal. You rock the sextant left to right until you find perpendicularity of it to where you say mark. So that's where you got a right angle happening right there. And so you say, at that point, you go to the books where they tell you where these stars are at every moment, second, month, the year, date. For thousands of years, they don't change, okay? And then you say, this is my time, so you get your longitude. And so then you say, this is where I'm at based on this. So the horizon is used to create a horizontal to where you can rock your sextant and get the zenith, the 90 of the star. Once you got the 90 of the star, then it's the co-altitude, that white space from the top of the right angle to where the observer is. And that's your zenith distance. It gives your zenith immediately because it's a box.
Okay.
Now,
Before
you
we
can't have a
Yes,
box
and-
on a
and
curved
there's-
Earth.
before
Hang
we
on.
continue,
You can't have a box on a curved Earth. I'm sorry.
correct, left-hand
And,
diagram.
and that was going to be my point. What's supposed to happen at the horizon?
Supposed to be-
What happens there? What's that supposed to be?
But it's supposed to
Well,
be
in
falling
their
away from
view-
you. It's supposed to be falling away, as you described, the distance to
Exactly.
horizon 1.2 times the square root of the observer's height in feet. But if it is falling away from you, you can't use it to establish level and have that level extend out thousands of miles. Exactly, chocolate.
Exactly my point. Yep.
Okay.
That's
But
why.
on their rhetoric, if you allow me just to finish with this, on their rhetoric, I mean, according with the globe measurement, the radius value for the sphere is the distance between the equator and the 90-degree angle to Polaris at the center of the Earth.
Correct.
So
gonna-
that circle of equal altitude is the 3959 miles that we are familiar with
Correct. So
of a circle.
correct. So you're talking about the limitation to the angle when measuring Polaris to give you latitude lines. Well, yes, if you want to look at it in one way, rather than using these various different navigation stars as depicted as S1, 2, and 3 on this diagram, with the left-hand diagram being how it wouldn't work because you can get 90s and how it does work on the right-hand side because it's on a flat plane. But you're talking about an area of equal elevation that you could describe as the equator. In other words, if you were to measure the angle to Polaris at its minimum, the area of equal elevation would be from its 90 all around its position, and that is the equator. Well, that means you've got an area of equal elevation from the equator to the center point of Earth in their model. Well, regardless of their model having the center point of an axis at the North Pole, in reality, we simply have an area of equal elevation for Polaris. So in this diagram, if S1 is Polaris, once you reach the minimum where S1 is, instead of way up here in the sky, instead of that, you've got Polaris right down here. So you're measuring the angle at a couple of degrees above the horizon. Well, that's your minimum angle, if you want, when it reaches the horizon. That's the equator. That's the minimum elevation angle measurement to Polaris. That means that there's an area of equal elevation between you on the equator and Polaris. There's a straight flat line between you, right, Jorge? That's
Correct.
your point.
Correct. I just put a picture of if someone wants to share with you, maybe Rogers can do that. Where is the measurement for the globe, the trigonometric the spherical trigonometry for the sphere with the radius of 3959, and they have the square lines, the boxes at the center of the sphere in hell. You have the 90-degree angle between the zero of Polaris and the zero of the equator line. And that distance is actually the radius. Because if you are doing navigation and you're gonna need that radius value between you and the 90 degree of Polaris in order to draw this circle that on this picture, it's actually a circle. It's just reified as to be a sphere. But this is exactly how it's done for navigation. And this is the measurement that they got for the radius of Earth. It's the radius of a circle, not a sphere.
Right. Okay, before we move on to the video, I'm going to ask one final housekeeping question. So I'm going to actually do this on camera. Is there any scientific evidence for gravity?
No.
Anybody at all?
It's
Just
not
no.
science.
I'm hoping someone will postulate an actual answer today. We'll see.
Okay, so gravity, what is gravity? Is it mass attracting mass, or is it the conceptual bending of length, width, depth, and time? It might be real. Gravity's real in the mathematics. But can we agree on terms? What is gravity?
Well, I'm hoping someone's going to tell me.
We've tried to say, can we science it? So we're going to be looking for a cause of an effect, yeah? A cause and effect relationship. So I'm not sure who just spoke there, but fundamentally, look, we're not able to even define the effect, the natural phenomena that's occurred for us to call gravity yet, before we could even look at a suppositional cause for it. So in terms of evaluating it with scientific method, no.
You can't determine the effect of an effect.
Well,
Well,
I think what Adam is saying-
One sec. Summary of Dell's argument. This is via Retro Bill Super Chat. Rich boy, Jimmy, knob cheese, tampon eating, some soup and tea, the end. Hashtag Earth still rising up. Retro Bill. I've just got one thing to say to you, Retro Bill, in that regard. So this was the whole point of me going on camera. All I got to say.
Alrighty then.
Okay, should we do the video?
Well, if
Well, hang
I might just say something, I met Mr. Gravity on the other day. So when you guys say you know what gravity is, I met the guy himself. He's the guy who drops things. He's the guy who does this force that he claims he is the force. Yeah, he's the one dropping and doing all these things that we never observe. So I call him Mr. Gravity. He is the cause
I
as to
hear-
why things are falling.
I hear he's a real down-to-earth guy. But what Adam is saying is, where's the phenomena? Where's the? I mean, you got to experience something happening in nature before you call it something.
Yeah, there isn't one.
Right. So then, how could it be
See-
scienced?
It isn't.
The-
There's no
The
natural
rebuttal
phenomenon.
I just received just after that description is interesting because it does kind of highlight where they're at. So I think I heard, no, you can't say the cause of a cause or the effect of an effect. That's not me saying that statement is born out of their contradiction. So as they try to describe what gravity is, they try to describe it as an effect of the bending of space-time as opposed to it just being a thing. So it's them trying to contextualize it into science or give it some way of viewing it that way that creates this misnomer. But if we were looking at why does stuff fall, which is what they're attributing a G-force to anything that's more dense than its medium, they're trying to attribute that not as a cause but as an effect, or as an effect, not a cause.
Yeah, go back to some of the old shows where we had them over a barrel with the pink writing, or QE more accurately speaking, had them over a barrel, because you'd tie them down to what their primary claim was in the first instance. What's their cause of the effect that they're studying? So we're going to need the effect. So when they give us the effect, well, the effect is, let's say, gravity, Q would write it down. That's dependent variable, effect, gravity. Okay. Fast forward 5 minutes, and they'll be asked, well, what's the cause of what you've just described? And they'll say, well, the cause of that is the gravity. And then you will go back to the pink writing and say, no, you previously said that that was the effect. The effect of what was happening would be gravity. It is the effect of this. Now you're saying it's causing it. And they'll be like, no, I didn't say that. Well, we've written it down now. It's in pink writing, you having said it.
Yeah. Gravity causes the force of gravity. Yeah. We
Exactly.
were told that. Fight the Tight Shirt told us that.
Okay. Right, call to action before we do. Almost 100 people watching already before I've even started the video. Wow, how long have we been going? 20 minutes. There's almost 100 people watching. Wow, brilliant. Please share the show. Very warm welcome to all of you who've just joined us. Presumably the people who are already in the chat and typically already share the show have shared it, and you've clicked on that link and made your way here. So brilliant. Thank you very much for joining us. But if you have just joined us, please smash the share button. It's the only way we get any algorithmic love around here, so we're not going to be shared with anybody unless you're doing it. So please do so if you've just joined us. Smash that share button, stick it on Facebook, stick it on Twitter. It's a one-click deal, really easy to do. So underneath the button, press it. Let's do the video.
Now this may sound like a complicated principle, but it can be understood through basic algebra. And to go over that algebra, I present to you the one and only Martimir81.
Okay, so a body in orbit is in...
This is where we got to yesterday. A body in orbit that is assuming in respect to Earth. So we're automatically assuming orbits here.
centripetal motion, and it...
Pause for a minute, please.
Yeah.
This is Mortimer. He's got Mortimer. We've done like 2, maybe 3 videos on this guy and debunked them on his own channel.
is affected by a centripetal force. The magnitude of this force is F equals mv squared over r.
I mean, this is truly fascinating mathematics, and all very interesting and true. However, you're going to ascribe this to your outrageous claims. A bit like Dal yesterday, yeah? You can talk about all the clever velocities and centripetal motion and forces, and you can talk about all those things, and it may very well be true. You may be able to give examples. But when you ascribe it to the outrageous claim that there's Earth doing these things, you know, we're never going to get those things pegged down. We always get into the argy-bargy of their formula for something that may be true. Yeah? Centrifugal forces, yeah, they're real. But it's the outrageous claim bit that gripes me, right? Earth doing that? Why hasn't he explicitly stated that? Well, number one, because most of the fundamentalist religious zealots watching this are looking to affirm their biases in the first place. So they already think it. They're here to get it. But without stating it out in the open, explicitly, you don't get the taste of how outrageous it is to make this assertion and ascribe it to Earth.
M being the
I'd like
mass
to
of...
just comment on that. This again is, the maths is lovely, absolutely beautiful. But again, we get to the point, does the maths describe reality? Now, when we're doing the centripetal stuff, we have a connection between the object and the point of rotation, i.e. a bit of string, yeah? So we can calculate these things, or a fairground arm rod, yeah, and many other things in reality. But then when we go to this guy, the thing that's creating the tension, the ability to rotate at a constant velocity and change its direction and maintain its orbit, is this thing that they've not been able to define even yet, a magic string called gravity that stops this thing flying off and enables it to experience the centrifugal and pedal forces. This is the mismatch, the switcheroo. Yes, we accept the maths. Yes, we accept the centripetal forces. But you've just shown me a picture with no connecting point between the point of rotation and the thing that's supposedly rotating and experiencing these forces. Mismatch
the
the reality.
body in
But
centripetal
Adam, this guy told us years ago, math is reality.
motion. V is its tangential velocity, and r is the radius of...
So we're going to assume that Earth has a tangential velocity and a radius. In short, every bit of the thing he's trying to prove is assumed in the first instance.
the orbit, or the semi-major axis if we're talking about an elliptical orbit, but we're going to be talking about a perfectly circular orbit here in this derivation.
I got a book
Right,
on that.
so
The difference between those two things. Shout out to John for sending me that. So Dr. John D sent me a book called The Sun in the Church that talked about, specifically about, the transition to elliptical orbits via Kepler. So typically we're just talking about the interplanetary motion, the third law, to give you the scale, because we typically ask the question, any evidence the distance to the sun. But in this instance, this is where the church wanted to get a better accurate idea of when Easter would be. And in order to give them that better predictive capability, they introduced elliptical orbits into the already existing heliocentric motions that was being used to predict things like events such as Easter. Well, they were wrong. They kept on getting it wrong. So when I said this over dinner literally on Friday night with my computer guy and a guy that comes to the Flat Earth Friday curry that we've sort of become a bit of a habit. And he was telling me about this, you know, from a normie point of view, giving me his rough idea about elliptical motion of Earth and the sun and the planets. And it's like, well, do you know who invented that? I asked him. He's like, what do you mean invented it? That's how the world is. No, it was invented for the sole purpose of better predicting when Easter would be on behalf of the church. The Roman Catholic Church invented this notion. Now, he's just disclaimed, no, I'm not talking about elliptical motion, just straight orbits. All right. So we can choose, can we? Well, you can when you invent this crap, as the church did. They just invented arbitrarily the notion of ellipses in their orbital motion. Not that we're in an ellipse, not that we're in an orbit. All of these things are assumed about the lights when using them as predictive tools to show when Easter will be. Go ahead.
Well, in this case, we've got the paradoxical that they've created the ellipse as you've just described, but in their model now, their heliocentric model, these orbits are elliptical. Yet what we're going to have the brains of Britain here come up because it's too difficult to do with an ellipse. Yeah, we're not going to do elliptical orbits like they claim to be in their reality. I'm going to now use maths that doesn't describe even my claim. It's too difficult. So I'm just going to stick with circles. This is the quality that they're providing us. It's beyond pathetic.
Look, right.
But do the planets move?
Hold on, Chocolate. What Adam's doing is saying, obviously, we stand in opposition to this garbage rhetoric. We point out it's wrong. When you're on the side of the rhetoric, I mean, it don't matter if I use just straight circles for this one. The standards are just so low, is what Adam's saying. And he's right. Our standards have to be high, right? We're held to a much higher standard than these fundy zealots, right? If we so much as misspeak, it'll be held against us for years. So we have to be hyper vigilant in terms of what we disseminate here. Because we're flat earthers, we're automatically assumed to be stupid. If you say one word out of place, well, there you go, obviously you're a flat earther retard. Can't even speak properly. However, on the globe side, I'll just use this shortcut. Doesn't matter about being fastidious. Doesn't matter about being accurate. Doesn't matter about staying in line with my own bloody rhetoric in this instance, right, Adam? It's just a joke. The standards are so low.
Yeah, but don't they
I was wondering.
And they're
Adam,
being extra heretical because this particular part, like you said, comes from the church. Ooh, that's some heresy for you.
Roman
That's
Catholic
terrible.
Church.
Wow.
I was wondering if they're going to use the periapsis in their explanation, because if they do, the Earth will need to be flat to get that angle.
yeah,
Just
they will. You know they will. That's why you're saying it.
Wait, I'm
know
confused.
they require a flat earth for this garbage rhetoric. The heart, the foundation of this globe earth garbage that we all swallowed is a flat earth. That's where all the measurements come from. Adam.
But
you
do
have
the
something to add?
celestial bodies move?
Go on, Neil. Go on.
Do the celestial bodies move?
Yeah, obviously. And apparently you can watch them.
But they don't orbit like they're telling us they orbit. Is that what you're saying?
No, in terms of their positions, if you look them up in the almanac, they physically move over the ground. If you want to say the physical location, ground position changes with time, well, that's movement. But in terms of what they are, to describe them as orbits, that has, in terms of the ellipse, the elliptical orbit, and the orbital assumption in the first instance from Kepler, all come from the church at the behest of the church for better predictive capabilities of things like Easter, in this example with ellipses. Roman Catholic Church.
The movement that we witness is supposedly ascribed to Earth rotation. It's only the positions that have changed daily. So the relative positions of their orbits aren't changing when we see them, Neil. The reason we see them moving is we're rotating on a spinning ball.
In Kepler's
but we're
So, yeah, be
supposed to be.
careful where they place their bits of claims, because this is why they struggle with retrograde motion.
According to
Right.
just let me get it in. According to orbital mechanics, just Adam didn't drop it in.
But I'm saying, but we're supposed to be in that, right? We're supposed to be one of them planets in there, correct? In that system.
Yeah. In the heliocentric
hold on.
system with the stars moving, in order for the elliptical motion to make sense, we must be part of the system, but not the center. Hence the title. The clue is in the name. Heliocentric. Sun at center. Not us.
Well, now, with orbital mechanics, you can put Earth at the center and have the sun and moon rotating it. You can do that.
Geocentric though, but that's not the system we're discussing in terms of ellipse and elliptical motion and orbital motion in this regard. That's all heliocentric.
Right, but you can do that with orbital mechanics. And the thing is if you look at just what the maths claim, it's claiming that the axis of the plane you're standing on is changing and the stars are remaining fixed, not that you're on a ball.
Gotcha. I can see what you're saying now.
That.
So you're saying when you take it back one step, you can take it to a geocentric sphere Earth, and you don't have to have sun at center heliocentric. But if you take that one step further back, and this is what I mean. Oh, your point, I won't take your thunder. This is what John's pointing out. When you go back another step, you're taking the angle measurements from flat Earth. You're taking concepts derived to give you systems for the stars based on a flat Earth, and all of their movements over it. So move up one step, you can make that geocentric. You can extrapolate out a ball Earth from the flat Earth measurements, but it doesn't alter the fact that when you get to heliocentric from geocentric from flat Earth, the origins are still the same, right, John?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you can then go
from
from
there in the math.
Flat Earth to geocentric to heliocentric with ellipse in the orbital motion, but they're all flat Earth in origin.
There's a saying, figures don't lie, but liars sure do figure.
It's a good one.
Now, what happens if the centripetal force, the force keeping this object in circular motion, is gravity? Well,
Objection. So as I said earlier, when we describe this, we've either got an anti-gravity thing at the fairground, you know, where the floor disappears, so that the wall is stopping you flying off.
Gravitron.
Thank you, Chocolate. Or we've got a yo-yo on a piece of string and we can spin that round. But we have something that is keeping the object where it is, so it can experience these forces. Now, what he's about to claim is this undefined thing is his piece of string. It's nonsensical, because if you've not got the actual force applied, or it's not being restrained, then all that can happen is the force dissipates onto the body and affects the body that would have been moving. The point of the rope or the string is to make sure that is then turned into an acceleration of circular motion. He's not got a rope, he's just got gravity, he's got his G.
Case, that force will be equal to the force of gravity, and the force of gravity is F equals G little m big M over R squared. Little
That's shame QE's
m is the same
In that
m as...
equation,
Go ahead, John.
in that equation, there's an R. Did he measure the R value to assert?
No.
Or did he measure the mass of Earth to assert an R of a volume for his mass?
No.
My question is, did he check his calendar? Did he say force of gravity?
Yes,
when was the last time gravity was considered a force?
Yes,
Let me check
that's
my
correct.
calendar again. Okay.
Yes, he's describing gravity as though it's a force. Quote, George Musa, Scientific American. Gravity is not a force. End quote. Professor Brian Cox. Quote. There isn't really a force of gravity at all. End quote. So I don't know what this numpty's talking about. But he's playing fast and loose. He doesn't have a standard. He's a globe believer.
In the other formula, and big M is the mass of the attracting body in the middle. What this means is that mv squared over r equals g little m big M over r squared.
Yeah, you're going to need R, you're going to need G, you're going to need M.
Yeah, but the reason he's doing this, he sent me this puzzle last night, is so we can cancel it out. Okay, so what he's done now, look, he's managed he's rearranged the formula so that they can cancel out G's and M's. This is what he's going to try and do now. What I assume he's going to derive maybe mass a little bit with a G as well.
Oh, this is net force 0.
He's trying to get rid of M, right, or one of the G's. Just let it play. And
I notice is that little m cancels out because we find it on both sides.
Yeah,
boom.
There you go. So what he's trying to say here is reason that everything falls at the same rate. So now what he's decided, look, the only parameters that are relevant aren't the object themselves, its relationship. It's just the mass of the Earth now, which is going to invoke this force. Even though it's mass attracting mass, and the masses should be relevant to each other if they're an attractive force, we've now cancelled them out in the maths. So we don't need to know M anymore.
Wait, did you say because all things fall at the same rate?
This is part of their claim, yeah. So this is
I got my hold on, got my helium balloon.
Well, you've ruined the equation now.
Yeah,
it does have mass. But it's look how I cancelled the mass out.
Bad equation.
I just saw that on screen. Yeah, but that's the purpose of this, isn't it?
This gives us v squared over r equals g big M over r squared. One of those r's in the denominator will cancel out on either side, so we're now left with v squared equals g big M over r. Now v, the velocity, is of course distance over time.
So what velocity are we talking about in respect to Earth precisely, pray tell? Where's it getting
the speed of you falling.
Sorry?
Speed of you falling.
Oh, I see.
The helium balloon drop.
Let me get it correct. The velocity comes from the assumption of an orbital motion.
It's coming from big G now. It's been defined and cancelled out that its own mass has no bearing on the rate it's going to fall. It's just based on big G, the mass of the Earth, and the radius of Earth, and then we're going to just solve the square root of that.
Do I need to release the helium balloon again? Sorry, did you say the rate it falls?
Yeah, if you release the helium balloon, you disprove this whole thing, because as you see, look, we cancelled out the mass. Mass is irrelevant, but this description insists down, doesn't it? It has to be down, and it's ignoring now the mass of the object, which is why your helium balloon ruins things. It demonstrates it's not really describing reality, is it? Especially if you can cancel out the mass of the object and it won't affect the result you get. Helium balloon.
Theo Megaworty says, props to Nathan for having that balloon on tap. Yeah, I debunked Martimer with a helium balloon.
Has he? Go on, Chocolate.
Nah, go ahead, man.
Thanks for the super chat, Theo.
No, I was just going to say, has he defined big G and little g? Because none of these people ever do that.
He just called gravity a force. So, I don't know.
What distance and what time? Well, a very convenient choice here would be to talk about the circumference in the time it takes to complete a full revolution. The circumference of a circle is 2 pi r, and the time it takes to complete a full revolution is 1 period, big T. So v squared becomes 2 pi r over t, all of that squared. In other words, 4 pi squared r squared over t squared, which equals gm over r.
I'm lost.
That's fine. It's just substituting in the equations.
Let's multiply both sides by r. We then notice that r in the denominator and r in the numerator cancel out on the right-hand side, giving us 4 pi squared r cubed over t squared equals g big M. Dividing by 4 pi squared on both sides, we get r cubed over t squared equals g big M over 4 pi squared. Let's invert and multiply both sides by r cubed. This gives us t squared equals 4 pi squared over gm times r cubed. Now 4 pi squared over gm is a constant, at least for all bodies orbiting the same central body with mass big M. So
that would be your begging the question fallacy inserted into this mathematics, which is perhaps true for a body attached by a piece of string. However, you're just assuming that, so you'll just drop it in the middle of the statement so that we are all under the misapprehension that this applies to us because in this equation Earth is an orbiting body. No, we're not. No, that was just invented by the church, to better predict when Easter would be. Just some dude just came up with it. Like you're coming up with maths and putting them on a screen. People can do that. But it doesn't change our world, and it doesn't put me in emotion. So you're going to have to do better than that.
That's how they fool people, though, isn't it? You have people like Mortimer there who come in with all the equations, and people just go, "Wow, this guy must know so much. How could I ever question this? This genius who obviously knows what they're talking about." And all he's after doing is begging the question via equations. Every single bit of those equations, he'd have to sit here and define and prove, including M, maybe M especially, So that's how they get people.
Yeah,
that's how
baffle
they've
them with
gotten people
bullshit.
for years.
Correct. What Brian's saying is you baffle them with bullshit, you razzle-dazzle them, in essence. Because if people... Perfect timing. Whoever said, I'm lost, I'm glad you were. That's the point. So that you get lost.
Because he's not showing you out. He's not done anything there. He's just rearranged the equation. And it looks complicated, really. You're looking at the equation saying, what can I cancel out? It's just a way of simplifying or changing it so that, as he's done there, he's now got the parameter t to solve for with the other bits. So there's nothing clever in that. He's not done anything. That is just like A-level maths. It's just moving the form, restructuring the formula to give you the solve, to solve it how you want it.
Sure, but in the process of doing so, we get to the point that I interjected, which is, so therefore begging the question, orbital motion of Earth. No, that's the only bit I'm going to pay attention to. His rearranging of maths is irrelevant to me, like Brian says, until he starts defining the terms that he's rearranging. The terms are all that matters. We're going to define those first if he was in front of me. He's not. He's doing it on a video. But when we get to the bit where he just says, well, because we're in an orbital motion, because I beg the question of something that a man called Kepler came up with to satisfy the church's interest in when the stars would line up such that they could say it was Easter, doesn't mean that his maths is going to allow me to walk past his begging the question inserted into the middle of the complicated maths when half the audience has fallen asleep. Well, I hadn't. I followed along. No problem at all. When we get to the point that you're assuming Earth's in an orbital motion, I stop the video and say, so is it you knowing that you're inserting that at this point when you say so? I mean, let's hear it again.
Now, 4 pi squared over gm is a constant, at least for all bodies orbiting the same central body with mass big M.
So, we're going to assume that?
So, what this...
Yes, we are. No, we're not. We will point out how that is a begging the question fallacy. It doesn't matter how complicated your maths are to describe something that you've just assumed. In this instance, an orbital motion comes from the Roman Catholic Church.
This means
Don't we have
t squared...
Hang on. That was Neil, by the way, who said I'm lost, and I was snoozing. It got that way for me as well. But we have a saying. This whole thing only exists in the math, or maths, as you guys say there. So this is a question, Adam, directed at you. Can you create a math for something that is not vetted or seen in reality and have all the figures right?
No problem at all. You want unicorn digestion? I can give you the maths for it.
But this is orbital mechanics. They're using the plane of reference for everything.
Just want to shout out to Retro Bill, who's made the point for me. We go back to the formula, you see where he assumes distance and denotes it in terms of pi. This is where his maths is no longer describing what he's saying. Shout out Retro Bill, but we're going around in an ellipse, yeah. But he's just described the orbit as a circle. So it's a completely wrong shape, it's wrong distance, yeah. Got varying rates of acceleration now, not a constant rate, because we're on an ellipse. So the reality we're trying to pretend and convince with the maths is not described by the maths. Put simply, you're describing a circle when you've already stated that it's an ellipse.
It's nice when you have a belief that you can just talk about and just flip around however you want. You can call gravity a force when it hasn't been a force in over 100 years. You could just say, yeah, we're going to talk about perfect circles instead of the elliptical orbits that we're supposed to be believing in. Yeah, we'll just skip that. It's hilarious when these guys just mix and match their model like a Mr. Potato Head. It's crazy.
You know, they can't mix and match everything though, because they still need a plane of reference. It's in all the maths.
Equals a
You're going to be
constant
validated, John. Don't worry, you're going to be validated.
Times r cubed. In other words, t squared is proportional to r cubed. Or to use the notations Red's used, p squared is proportional to a cubed. Thank you. We're done. Goodbye.
Nathan, one moment. I don't know if people are caught on, but he's doing the maths for a measurement that they supposedly haven't completed yet. How could he be doing the maths for something that the whole video is supposed to be about? How can you do the maths now when you're not even completing the measurement? Because that's basically what he's doing. He's already doing the maths that would be based on a measurement to the distance to the measurement of the distance to the heliocentric sun.
Weren't you paying attention to what John just said?
I was.
Do you want to repeat it, John?
I told him he'll be validated.
Yeah, but you're talking about he's doing he's mathsing something he hasn't measured yet. Well, yeah, he has. To give him a basis for his maths, he's taking flat Earth measurements. That was John's point. He's disappeared now, but whatever.
Yeah, I know that. I know what they're doing. What John is pointing out, he's pointing out several times. He's going to be validated in a while in this video. The point I'm making is that how can Mortimer be doing these maths when there is no measurement even yet of a distance?
Right.
That's the point I'm making. How can he be doing any maths?
Doing that yet. He's trying to. At this point, he's resolved it. Look there. Therefore, p squared is proportional to a cubed. He's trying in this bit to claim that Kepler's orbital mechanics are correct. That's what he's doing here. He's
correct.
Just doing a mathematical proof.
I had to stop you. You're doing a great job, Adam, but we have already covered this, and I laboured the point already that it's just there to beg the question. So long as we're in an orbital motion.
No, my point I'm making is he's not demonstrated anything. The maths was already proven. He's just gone through the proof. So he's not done anything per se, other than repeat what was already there, because that's how it was worked in the first place. Yes. So he's not done anything there other than demonstrated the assumption he's already made. So he's just showing that the maths in the assumption he's already made kind of works. So the equation balances, but he's not done anything other than that. There's nothing clever there. He's just rearranged the formula based on the assumptions.
Okay, let's move on.
Yeah, hang on.
Please.
Just leave me finish.
All
right.
We're going to repeat the same thing.
I want to miss a big point.
Okay, go ahead. Let's just never move on with this 45-minute video.
No, this is all right, but you're going to miss it. The point I was making.
Make it, Brian.
I'll make a point, and I've been waiting to make this point. This video is Red's rhetoric. He's got two segments. One is Mortimer which is from a Mortimer video, which is what we just seen. And the other one is Astronomy Live, I believe. So Rhett's rhetoric is like a conductor using these people, and we haven't got to the finish yet.
Thank you, Marty. It's also worth noting that the entire derivation of Kepler's third law is linked down below in a Google Doc. That way,
So you can beg the question with us.
No, and that's what Marty just read out. That document, that derivation, that's what he just read out. Yeah, didn't do it. Like I said, he didn't do anything. He's just recited, just read a paragraph, but the paragraph was in maths.
way you can look it over on your own time. But with Kepler's third law defined, it's now time to test it in reality.
With Kepler's third law assumed, let's go and check if it matches. Well, he's taken the notion of flat Earth measurements of the motions of the lights, converted it into spherical motion, and then added ellipses only for Mortimer to then reject them to give him nice simplistic maths prior to ellipses being added. Okay, but at no point have we proved that we're in motion. So we're going to now test how a correlation taken from flat Earth to infer that we're in motion matches with the original inference. So essentially circular reasoning.
And thankfully we can do that.
Well, what's happening is this is the point I was trying to make a few minutes ago, is that Kepler is the one who gave them their distance to the sun. Kepler had an average distance over a 12-month period, right? But he also had an obviously changing elliptical distance. So, of course, Kepler's maths are going to match Kepler's distance. How can you do the maths for something that you haven't measured yet? They didn't measure anything. They're just using the maths that's based on the distance that Kepler gave them. And his maths are based on the distance that he came up with, based on an R value and several other assumptions. So they're already doing maths on something that nobody measured yet. That's the point.
I give them all that. They're getting ready to prove a flat Earth anyway.
But already have.
Because of two observations by Astronomy Live. On May 28, 2023, he made an observation of the Viasat-3 satellite. It's a geostationary satellite that was launched into orbit on a Falcon Heavy rocket. And in fact, Astronomy Live was able to film that rocket launch from the other side of Florida. That video is amazing, and I'll link it in the description. But in addition to Viasat...
Oh, isn't it a pretty firework? No.
Viasat-3, he also observed the GPS satellite, Navstar...
GPS? Brian, how does GPS work?
On a horizontal plane, Nathan. There's going to be a whole presentation about that this Saturday.
Tell me all about it.
Well, GPS uses the Cartesian coordinate system, dimensional first, and followed by three-dimensional, which is a grid system of squares and/or rectangles that can't work on a spherical surface. So there's no way around it.
You had me at horizontal plane. Where would you get one of those on a sphere?
Dear.
Yeah, all the zeniths for each system must be parallel with the zenith for every other system. So no zenith can be divergent with GPS.
Oh dear.
They also then convert to latitude and longitude, which is the original flat Earth coordinate system. That's what you see on your Google when you go to Google Earth. You see your latitude and longitude, and they give you a height above what they call an ellipsoid, which is just mean sea level, which is all based on X, Y, Z to begin with, all of
it. X, Y, Z being straight line coordinates.
Yes, flat Earth required.
78 on May 29th, 2023. Because of these two observations, he was able to test Kepler's third law. So to go over those details, I present to you Astronomy Live.
On May 28, 2023, around midnight, I recorded this time-lapse of a geostationary satellite, Viasat-3. It's the bright dot in the middle, and you can see stars streaking by in the background. The telescope's drives were off during this 45-minute time-lapse, but you can see the fact that Viasat-3 is not moving. It is truly geostationary. In order to measure the distance and velocity of the satellite with parallax, I used a telescope over the internet on the iTelescope network at an observatory located in Chile. In these images, the telescope is tracking the stars, and Viasat-3 is a bright streak moving from the lower left to the upper right, along with other geostationary satellites in the area.
Geo what now? Geostationary?
Bro, use the telescope on the internet.
I'm
Yeah,
more interested.
a geostationary satellite stays at the same point over the globe Earth. That's what they would say. So it would go, if I remember correctly, it would go with the rotation of the globe. So basically, it moves along with the stars.
Allowing the satellite to streak through the view while tracking the stars allows us to more easily measure its position with astrometry, measuring the coordinates of each pixel in the image using the location of the stars. For this reason, I also recorded more images from my location in Florida by actually tracking on the stars and allowing Viasat-3 to streak through the view repeatedly. Here you can see the results of my astrometric measurements of these images and the coordinates of Viasat at a simultaneous point in time as seen from Chile and as seen from Florida. This simultaneous observation...
Pause. I'm confused. This claim that we've been hearing for years that Earth atmosphere move as one. Now, Brian just said something. If the stars are moving from a drone footage hovering above the Earth, not on the Earth, with the Earth moving, the stars are moving. What is this geostationary satellite actually? What is the claim? If the stars are moving when the drone lifts off the Earth, so meaning Earth's rotation isn't affecting it, it's moving with the stars then, not the Earth.
We haven't actually got his full claim yet.
From two different points on the Earth will allow us to measure its distance and altitude over the Earth, and because...
There it is. So, from the two positions, he's measuring the distance and altitude above the Earth. That's going to require a flat Earth elevation angle measurement, though, isn't it?
It's in a circular orbit, that altitude remains consistent throughout the course of the orbit. We will also use this image I captured about 21 minutes later in order to measure its velocity relative to the Earth. On the evening of May 29th, I captured these images of Navstar 78, a GPS satellite expected to be in a slightly lower circular orbit than a geostationary satellite. Once again, I captured simultaneous images of the same GPS satellite as seen from another telescope at the same observatory in Chile. Once again, I used astrometry to find the coordinates of the satellite, both from the observatory in Chile and in a simultaneous observation in an image taken from my telescope.
So, coordinates in a system derived from a flat Earth. Fascinating. So, he found out where it is with relation to a flat Earth grid system. Okay. What's he trying to prove again?
Florida. I also captured this image a little...
Well, so far, he's using systems that are derived from flat Earth grids. So, I mean, so far, correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, he's affirmed lots of flat Earth proofs, has he not?
Absolutely, and the information he would have got from astronomy would have been right ascension and declination, which I'm not going to say too much because it's coming up in a minute, and I don't want to ruin it. Coming up in a small way. Okay.
A little over 6 minutes later from my position in Florida in order to measure the velocity.
I just want to check this setup understanding. So in where he is, he's got his telescope fixed, looking at what he claims is a geostationary satellite, and the movement that he's witnessing is the Earth rotating and the stars appear to be moving. His geostationary thing stays fixed, and in Chile, he's got what must be an equatorial mount set up so that is constantly moving, and that's why it appears that the geostationary satellite is moving.
Velocity of the GPS satellite. Let's now discuss how we can use these observations to actually measure the distance, altitude, and velocity of these satellites. Here's a diagram to picture the view from two different observers on the Earth. The red laser represents my line of sight to a satellite from Florida. The blue laser represents a line of sight from the observatory in Chile. This is not to scale for either of these observations, but it's just to give you an understanding of how we're going to measure the distance and altitude of these satellites.
Okay, so you're going to measure an angle. Well, that would require that this bent line here is the baseline. That won't give you an angle. What you've drawn, Astronomy Live, the vertex point is not an angle. Perhaps Astronomy Live is stupid and he doesn't understand what an angle is. If this is your position standing on the Earth and you are measuring to a point in the sky, be it a star or in this case your claim of a satellite, then the angle would be formed between the base, that's a straight line, and another straight line, two straight lines. That's what gives you an angle. This isn't an angle, Astronomy Live. Are you stupid? I'm going to go with yes, because you think that this curved line meeting this straight line will achieve an angle. At a fundamental level, you don't understand what an angle is. Curved lines meeting straight lines don't form angles.
What was the name of that program that the other guy, I forget who was using it, that he was using that said, this object is not a line. Access denied. What was the name of that?
You're talking about Rob Durham's example in CAD, where he shows
Yes.
that you can't get an elevation angle measurement from a curved baseline. And in this instance, he said, this is what we're doing to scale. No, it is not. You're measuring angles. You've already detailed what you're doing, measuring angles. That's not an angle, bonehead. Part of this don't you get? Don't you understand what a bloody angle is? Clearly not.
Each observer will see a different set of background stars behind the satellite, and so we can use the astrometry measuring the position of the satellite relative to the background stars to measure the parallax, the angle at the tip of the triangle. Now, in order to solve for the distance to either observer or the altitude of the satellite over the surface of the Earth, we need to know the baseline of the observations.
Oh, really? How interesting. It's funny that I should have mentioned how this doesn't have one. A baseline would be straight. This baseline is not straight. If this isn't a baseline, you've got this on screen while you're describing things that must be straight and you've got them depicted as curved, not achieving an angle.
Also, if looking at the picture you have up, you see the stars outside of that longitude, latitude globe that he's describing? That's not the globe. That's the celestial sphere, and the stars are inside of that. This is reversed.
And the baseline is actually a line that runs through the surface of the Earth directly between the two observers, like this.
Oh, sorry. The baseline that we measure along the surface when we use a horizon to establish a flat horizontal baseline to GPs. For example, on screen now. This
no,
would
he's
be
tunneling, Nathan. He's tunneling through the Earth to make his baseline. His baseline is not the surface.
No.
I was just gonna say that, Adam. I was just gonna say, is that a new occupation, tunneling through the Earth? Because that's what he said.
Baseline tunnelers, yeah. Professional job. When you're building triangles on balls, you see, you need somebody that can dig a tunnel.
Right, at
Well,
a fundamental
he's
level,
contradicting
no.
the
Sorry,
mathematics.
gentlemen. While you may mock, no. That is not a baseline, Astronomy Live. Yeah, what you have drawn out is the equatorial plane, and as 10th Man called before you got there, it would have the stars inside the celestial sphere if the equatorial plane is what you're describing as a baseline. But that would put the ground on that flat plane and the stars inside the sphere. Furthermore, if you're to assert that this sphere is the surface of a ground you think you're standing on because you're a fundamentalist religion who believes the nonsense that's come from Kepler at the behest of the Roman Catholic Church, this is not a baseline in that regard because you'd have to tunnel through Earth, as the rest of the panel's getting very narky about, and I don't blame them. No, we're not tunneling through Earth for baselines.
Sorry.
Baselines run along the ground. They run along the base. This is a baseline. Now, even your own fundies have decided to turn this version of it into a disco ball Earth, but they're certainly not tunneling through it to get a baseline. Nobody is. You are an idiot. This is not a baseline.
Yeah, right. I don't even. I think he's. I can't see the video, but I think it's just a chord he has going on between two observers.
No. What he's drawn is the equatorial. He's drawn a line that would represent the equatorial plane. 10th called it. 10th was right. 10th got there first before he did.
Well, no, I know what's going to happen here. I just wasn't sure if he's done a chord because I saw another video where there was a chord.
No,
it's okay. Don't worry. The best is yet to come.
That yellow line, he will try and equate to the equatorial
Oh,
plane.
yes, he has. Sorry, Brian.
Yeah.
Adam caught it and I didn't. Yes, he has drawn a chord line through it, Brian. I just didn't spot it.
But it's not the
tunnel.
equatorial plane then. It's just a chord.
It is. He's drawn a blue line and said it's the base. He's just described that. But he has, in the diagram, for some reason, now got a chord line as well. Adam caught it. I don't remember him saying it. I'm going to rewind 10 seconds. Yeah, because there's where it appears.
His chord is the Great Trans-American Tunnel that he's just made.
Hold on.
Observer, or the altitude of the satellite over the surface of the Earth, we need to know the baseline of the observations. And the baseline is actually a line that runs through the surface of the Earth directly between the two observers, like this.
I was wrong. You were right. Sorry, 10th. You were wrong also.
Brian contradicts.
Yeah, that's why me and Adam were making fun of it.
But
Say that again. Say that again, Nathan. I missed it.
We were wrong collectively. You're saying he's drawing an equatorial plane. The star should be inside the ball. No, he's not. He is declaring this is the surface of a sphere Earth, and even explicitly stating that it'd have to tunnel through Earth. That's how he phrased it. He didn't say tunnel, but through the surface. Again, nobody's.
No, he's the blue line he's got there is the equator, right?
I get that. Okay. Let's just move on, please.
Well,
no, I know
the yellow laser is a chord that
wrong.
runs directly between the two observers' locations. This is our baseline, and if we calculate this distance, we can...
There it is. This is our baseline. The chord is what he's referring to, as Brian and Chocolate and Adam alluded to.
Yeah, but, and this is the point that Ten's making. Now, all of these angles that he's going to take from this imaginary chord off the surface that he's got, they actually, because he's using the star field, they are on the equatorial plane. Now, he's now got the yellow line crossing his equatorial plane. When he takes that, he's got to take that to the center of the Earth to apply it, but he's not going to. He's going to use his tunnel distance to derive things here. So he's now got a mismatch with the star field and the trigonometry he's going to do on his object. So that's what I think Tent is describing the mismatch here, because that yellow line that he's taking his angles off is the equatorial plane, but you can see it can't be now because of the way he's defined it. It's a tunnel, not the equatorial plane.
Use it to solve the triangle and determine the distance of the satellite from either observer. More importantly, we can also calculate the altitude of the satellite over the Earth. Here's the spreadsheet. First, highlighted in the top left, you enter the time and date in universal time, as well as the two observer locations. In my case, my observer location in Florida, as well as the location of the observatory in Chile. For the sake of my personal safety and anonymity, I'm not giving away my exact location, but it's a location close enough for our purposes. To the right of the input box for date, time, and location.
Nathan, right, please leave me a chance to say this. This is important. This is what I was trying to say after that. You know, when celestial navigation, where they just start with an angle and then suddenly it's at the center of their globe. Now, what Tent was saying was correct. All his angles should be coming from an equatorial plane, but he's not going to the equatorial plane because to take his angle, because he can't. So he has to make up a baseline before he can go to his equatorial plane, which he is going to do. Just like in celestial navigation, where they don't have any measurements from their surface, they always start at the equatorial plane and start measuring arc lengths. Same thing here. Tent is correct in what he's saying. What this guy is doing is trying to fool people. That's what's going on with his chord length.
Our
the chord length is contradicting orbital mechanics, which is the thing he's claiming to use. You don't use chord lengths in orbital mechanics. You use the plane of reference. So this is garbage. Absolute garbage.
It is, but he corrects himself in a while. But this is all begging the question. This is all sleight of hand. Watch it.
Location during the simultaneous observation, which we'll use to actually measure the distance of the target. You can find that in the highlighted boxes here. Below that, we have another date and time entry box for the second observation that I made from Florida, and below that, we have the input boxes for the astrometry of that second observation. We'll use this data to measure the velocity of the satellite, but more on that later. Once you've put in the data, the spreadsheet goes to work. First, calculating the chord length distance between the two observer locations in this cell you see highlighted on the left. Below that, the spreadsheet calculates what will later be known as angle A in our diagrams. This is the angular separation
So the angle between the ground that's straight through the Earth and the star, when are you getting that? How is he getting a chord length angle through Earth? He isn't. Simple as that.
Between the second observer
location
digs through the Earth.
Yeah, he's not tunneling through Earth for this angle. It's just nonsense.
and the satellite in the sky. We'll discuss in greater detail later how we go about calculating this angle.
Off a flat Earth, you'll measure it off a flat Earth. Calculations for the angle that you measured off a flat Earth are irrelevant.
Or is it? I think he did that purposely.
What I was trying to say is that when they do that chord length, when they go subterranean, okay, like rodents, they're actually getting that from the equatorial plane to the celestial sphere model, the imaginary sphere. So then they project that sphere back and make it the outside of a globe. So that chord length, in other words, if you take that and say that's really the angle from the center, the equatorial plane, and then project it back from the celestial sphere, you've got a globe all of a sudden, which is the celestial sphere projecting the arc of the measurement, and that becomes their surface. So the whole point is the celestial sphere is being projected to give them their globe Earth, but the angle measurement has to come from a flat baseline all along. It's a flat Earth. It's the projection of the concave nature of the celestial sphere due to perspective that they make the surface.
Lastly, we take a quick look here at some of the output of the spreadsheet. It shows the distance of the target from Florida at time point 1, as well as the altitude over the Earth. Again, this is a circular orbit, so that altitude will remain fixed throughout the orbit. In this case, the spreadsheet is actually calculating the parallax angle directly from the astrometry that we put in as input. Normally, I would use SAO image DS9 to measure this angle. That's the program you saw me using earlier to make each of the individual measurements. You can also measure the length of a line in that program in order to measure the parallax. But for parallax this large, 16 degrees, it actually becomes unstable.
You'll need a flat Earth for your equatorial mount and your angle measurements. I mean, we keep pointing it out, but you're just using flat Earth concepts. You know, while you've stated that you've put it into a system that digs through Earth to make the angle a chord, we know how that's actually represented off the equatorial plane with the projection of the angle measurement through a sphere Earth that you thought you were standing on out towards the celestial sphere. But that doesn't mean that the angle projection can then have a chord line drawn through the Earth that you thought you were standing on when the angle itself has come from a plane, as just detailed by John and 10th.
And runs into floating point errors, which results in inaccuracy in the measurement. So, to do this better, we're actually calculating it directly.
Sorry, calculating it directly to give you a better measurement. You don't calculate directly, right? If you've got an inaccuracy in your measurement, you measure it better. You don't calculate it better, yeah? And your measurement came from a flat Earth. It's an angle measurement.
Using spherical trigonometry based on the astrometry.
Spherical trig? Sounds like an oxymoron to me.
We'll get into that a little bit later.
Come on, Neil.
Are they talking about angles through hell now instead of from hell?
No, this guy's convoluting the two. So he's saying that his program takes the measurement of the chord, whereas in reality, it's an extrapolation thereafter that 10th just detailed. The measurement would actually come from the equatorial plane, his blue line in his diagram. Then that measurement comes along, let's say the base of the star is way, way out beyond where a sphere Earth could accommodate. Well, then you have a flat baseline along the equatorial plane, going out through a globe Earth that's completely surplus to requirements to the GP of the star, with the star being on the celestial dome, out measured to infinity on their model, but just in reality a perspective representation of you measuring a star. Well, its GP, like we discussed earlier, could be thousands of miles away from you, beyond, like I say, where a globe Earth could accommodate. But when you then map out that arc that you measured along a flat baseline to the star, you can project out at 3959 radius a globe Earth. Now that globe Earth would have the arc of the tool represented as the Earth you're standing on, meaning you're in hell when doing this at a true originistic stand from a point of view that you're starting with how it's actually done as 10th detailed, Neil. However, that's not what he is actually doing, which is why it's discussed so at nausea in the last 10 minutes. Because, or why the confusion came from me originally, it's not what he's actually doing. He's describing it as though the measurement is of the chord line. Well, it isn't. We're not tunneling through Earth. And it's not how it's done in reality, if you're going to even infer from page 87 of the books on navigation, for instance, that this could be done in a spherical manner. In which case, yes, Neil, that's where you're right, it would be, but for the fact he's convoluting it, angles from hell. I hope that answers your question.
He can't, Nathan. He can't. You see, he has to start with the chord line that he knows is wrong, because he can't go straight to the center, because then it's obvious he's just using a flat plane. Whereas he has to be able to come up with some kind of an ad hoc angle measurement using the surface of the globe, but via a chord line. He has no choice. That's like just like in celestial navigation, where all the borders, they all deny the measurements that happen on the surface of Earth. They all just want to go straight to the center of their globe after the measurements have happened. That's what he's. Yeah, go on.
Sorry, Brian. The purpose of the tangent plane always being drawn on the surface of a circle that's supposedly the globe Earth. What's the purpose of that tangent plane? Is to mirror the equatorial plane. Okay, so this guy is not doing that in this image. He's going through a chord line. So he's actually using a circle and saying, I'm going to go right through it. Well, that's not the way navigation is done. And so the whole purpose of that tangent plane, and it's 3959 distance from the equatorial plane, is that because of the vastness of space and the distance of the stars are so far, it's negligible. That's what it's nonsense.
With that, I'm going to say if you are watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley premiering streams, then stay tuned, as there will be an after show to follow. Unfortunately, if you are watching this live, this is where we bid you farewell. So another massive thank you to all of you who smashed the super chat, liked, commented, shared, subscribed, joined as a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member, hit me up on PayPal and all that good stuff. Once again, stay tuned if you're watching on an after show. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I will see you all in the next video.
What a lovely day!